Right, now we're into the final section where what we need to do is to actually go and configure our blog. So if we go up to the top left and we click on the layouts, we've got the two layouts, as you probably know by now. So the first layout is the default layout, which is the one that we're actually going to go ahead and click. And in there you'll see these two blue items. Now these two blue items are our blog and our news page. I'll get to the news page a bit later, but all we got to do is just click anywhere on that and it will actually bring up the blog for us to edit. So I'm just going to close that so that you can have a look at it. Now the blog, quite honestly, is exactly the same in this case as everything else on your site. So again, you'll see that your header is the same as every other part on your site, and of course the footer, as we scroll down, is the same as every part on your site as well. So all we then have to be concerned about is this little bit in the middle. So the very first piece up here, you've probably seen this before. You can leave this or you can keep it. It's really just for you to go ahead and to set up in order to create one more opportunity to get their email address. And you've seen how to do that before. Just go back to the autoresponder section, go and set up a list. Then all you're going to really do is right click, you'll configure the list, you'll click mailing boss. It'll automatically populate the keys. You'll go and choose whatever list you want, and bang, it's really as simple as that. So that's the easy part. So let's get to all of the new stuff. So as we scroll down a little bit, what you're going to see is all of the blog content. Now the blog behaves a little bit differently to everything else. So let me go ahead and show you how to set your blog up. Now if you look, there's sort of two areas. You've got this one area over here and you've got this widget area on the side. So they're both in big blocks and everything's inside. Now this first piece over here, this is actually the blog app. So it's already created for you and there's very little that you've actually got to do other than make it look like you want it to look. So the way we do that is we simply right click on it, and the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and select our theme. So as we go and we select our theme, what we see here, and I'm just going to move it down just a touch so that we can actually see what's going on, is everything that enables us now to customize the look and the feel of our blog. So the very first thing that you're going to see is under general items, you're going to see these different themes. So the current layout that we've got is this very first one. That is the layout, which is really the default. So you've got the images around along the side, and then you've got all the information relating to your blog post over here. So you can see there's other options where you've got one big one on the left and then the rest of the small ones on the right. Here you've got 6 on a page. There we've got them kind of all over the show, so it's just as and when they fall. So you can play around if you want with these, but I'm just going to stick currently with the default because I quite like that. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you each little piece of this so you can go and see how to actually edit your blog. And honestly, it's very, very intuitive. There's really nothing to it. And what I want to suggest that you do is that the best way for you to find out what it is that you're editing is to go ahead and click the color palette. So just before we do that, if we look at how this whole thing is structured, the very first thing you're going to see is a big bold headline over here, and that is obviously referring to the section that we're about to edit. So this is the feed background. So if you're thinking to yourself, oh my goodness, what is that? Well, just click here on the color palette and let's just click it's kind of a very light pink color. So as we do that, let me just move our color picker out of the way. Now you can see exactly what the effect is. So clearly that's the background, and here you can see a small image of it, and here beneath us we can actually have a look and see it in the actual size. So we know that that's the situation as far as the feed background is concerned. So we continue to scroll, and the next thing we talk about is the image. Now that should be fairly obvious what the image is, but nonetheless we can see what the border style is. We can have a hidden border style, in which case there's nothing, but if we click a solid border style, which is mostly what we want to do, then there's going to be a border around that image. So again, let's just go and change it. So let's make it a brighter red so that we can actually see. And then if we drag this little slider when it talks about border size, you'll see currently it's at 1 pixel, but as we drag it bigger and bigger, you'll start to see the effect. All right, so now you can actually see exactly what that border looks like. So that's the first thing that we can do. Now as we continue to scroll down, the next thing that we can do is we can round the corners of that border. So for example, if we make that 20, and I'll just carry on and make them all 20, and as I'm doing that, you're seeing that our image is changing. And once I click that last one, you can see now that the corners are very, very rounded. And obviously you can increase the size of that rounding to anything that you want, or you can obviously reduce it. Then the next thing is all about shadows. So if we enable our shadow, we can see there's an internal shadow So again, we can go ahead and we can click on it. What color are we going to make our shadow? I don't know, let's make it green just because we can. Just to show you, so now you can see the shadow is actually on the outside. And again, if we just move our color picker out the way, you can then go ahead and change things. So you can put the shadow on the left. Now you can see it's very pronounced to the left. You can obviously put it on the right, or you can kind of drag it into where you want it. So you can put the shadow on the top, or obviously on the bottom, same principle. And now you can blur that shadow even more, and obviously you can increase the size or decrease the size of that shadow. So let's just leave it kind of like that. In fact, I don't particularly like the shadow, so I'm gonna get rid of it. And of course that's the external shadow, but there's also an internal shadow that we can do. So if we go in and we change it to an internal shadow, and let's take a darker sort of blue color this time, and let's have a look what that looks like. It's a little bit harder to see because obviously the shadow is on the inside and it's really getting hidden by the actual image. So that's not particularly useful for us, but in other circumstances it may be, just as long as you know how to actually deal with the shadow. So anyway, let's get rid of the shadow because I don't think it plays much of a purpose. So that's the image. Then the next thing is the title separator. So again, you're going to ask yourself, well, what is the title separator? Well, who knows? Let's go ahead and click again, and let's click bright green this time. And of course, as we increase the border size, now you can see exactly, if we move that out the way again, what the title separator is and where it is. All right. Pretty simple. We keep going. The next thing is the news tab. So again, let's just go pick a color. Let's pick a blue color this time, and again let's go and drag it so we can see where it is. And of course you can go ahead and you can change it. So we're going to have a dash border, or we can go back and have a solid border, and so you can see exactly now where the news tab is. Now we move down a bit more. Now we get to the news itself. So we get to the news appearance. Again, let's go and choose a color. Now we're getting really creative. And again, we can move that border up and down so you get to see exactly what it is. So what it's really doing now is it's actually moving the spacing as far as that's concerned. And again, you can go ahead if you want to, and you can round the corners like you saw before, and of course you can also enable the shadow. So let's go and round the corners again and do our thing as you can see. Right, there we go. So you can see the pronounced effect at the bottom here of the corners actually being rounded in this case. And again, you can go and play with the shadows and it'll do exactly the same thing. And of course, you can also play with the spacing. So as we move this, you can see how it's increasing the spacing, particularly at the top here. That may be a bit too pronounced, so we'll just take it back a little bit. And that really takes care of all the general items. So as you can see, it's really, really simple to edit. Then the next thing is we're going to get into the text part. And this works in exactly the same way. So again, let's move this out the way so that we can see what we're doing. And you can see now there's a little bit of a difficulty in actually seeing everything. So what we're going to do is we're going to maybe move this down just a touch. So we'll move that up so that you can see the effect at the bottom here. So again, the title should be fairly obvious what the title is, but again, let's just go and pick something bold. So let's go with orange. So now you can see what the title is. Again, you can go ahead now and you can do anything with that title. So currently it's left aligned. You could stick it in the center so you see what it does there. It could obviously be right aligned. You could also go ahead and do the justification, which in this case doesn't make much sense. So let's go put it center aligned. You can bold it, of course. You can make it italics if that's what you want to do. You can choose and change the font. So if we click on that, any font really that's in here, you can go ahead and change it to. So if we choose California, you can see it's change it slightly, and then over here you can go and increase the size of the font. Oops, there you go, up to 37, and of course we can then reduce it, and as we click on it, you can see what the effect of that is. Right, so that's the font. The next thing is the date. That again should be fairly clear. So let's go and get and pick maybe this sort of purple for the date, and so you can obviously see what has happened there. Again, you can justify it, you can bold it, you can change the font, you can change the size, and then again you can also manipulate the spacing from the top. So as we move it, it gives you an opportunity to see how we're moving it. So the next thing is the author. So let's go ahead and change the author to something a bit more pronounced. Let's take a purpley color. No, that's going to clash too much. Let's go and do a red. We haven't done a red in a while. Let's get rid of that so that you can actually see the effect. Again, you can justify it. You can change the font and obviously the size. And again, you can change the spacing. So if I just go ahead and actually just increase the size, that'll give you an opportunity to see over there, author example. Then lastly is the content. Again, should be fairly obvious, but just in case it isn't, let's go and change that. Let's make the content a nice strong blue so that you can actually see it. Again, all of the same rules apply. You can justify it any way you want. You can change the font, you can change the font size, and again, you can manipulate the spacing ever so slightly. Then we get down to the button. That's the button that says read more. So again, we can go click on that. And let's go and make this kind of a bluey color. So now you can see that's actually not the greatest color. Let's go and make it something a little bit darker, maybe a maroon. And hopefully you can see that change over there. Now that's obviously the color of the text. So it's not the actual color of the button. And again, you can go ahead and change all of your other settings as far as that's concerned in terms of justification, in terms of color, in terms of font, and in terms of size. And we get down to categories. Now this one here is a little bit hidden, so let's have a look at categories. Now categories are actually these little pieces at the bottom. You can't see much because they're actually very small at the moment. Just now I'll show you how to actually increase the size of those, but for now, again, you can do exactly the same thing. Let's go and change the color to something that we can actually see. Let's pick that blue over there. Now, hopefully you saw that. Very difficult to see because it's pretty small as far as that's concerned. Again, we can play around with the spacing. You can increase or decrease the size of the font. So as we're doing that, as you can see, it's starting to increase a little bit. The categories haven't been widened enough, so it looks a little bit silly at the moment. But later on, when I show you how to widen it, this is where you change the text size if that's what you want to do. And then we've got the pagination item. So again, we'll click on the pagination. Let's go with a bit of a red. We can't actually see that right now. I'll show it to you just now what that actually looks like. So that happens when we get a lot of blog posts that have to actually go onto a second or a third page. Right, so that is essentially everything to do with text. Now we can go to actions, so let's have a look. So now we get back to our button. So this is now actually going to be the button itself and not just the text. So of course we can go ahead and we can change it. Now we made it a red, so we probably need to go with something of a bit of a lighter color. Let's go with a bit of a gray background just so that you can see that it's actually changed. And of course we can do a hover color as well, just to show you. We'll make it something kind of crazy like a green. So as you hover over it, let's see if you can see up top there, as we hover over it, it now changes to a different color. Again, you can play with the spacing, and here now you can actually increase the size. Okay, and of course you can increase or decrease the height of that button. So if you then wanted to go back to your text, that's how you can make the size of that text bigger. So I'm just going to make that a little bit smaller so that it looks a little bit more proportioned. Next thing, of course, is the border style. So we've seen that before. Currently it's hidden. So if we go ahead and we create a solid style and we go ahead, let's make it sort of a bright red again. And if we actually increase the size, now you can see what that looks like. Again, if you like rounded buttons, you can go and round it. If you need a shadow, you can enable the shadow, which I don't want to do on this particular button. Then we move down to the categories themselves. Of course, that's these little pieces over here that we couldn't see before. So spacing again from the top, so you can see as we space it. And of course we can increase or decrease the size. So as we increase the size, now we can actually see a lot more. We can't quite see the full description, and that's probably because when we were editing earlier, we made it so big. So we can obviously go back into text and we can make it a bit smaller, and should you need to increase or decrease the height of the category, you can do exactly the same thing. The background color again, should you want to change it, so let's make that a nice big yellow. Oh, there we go. That's like screaming at us, so you'll definitely be able to see that. Again, a hover color, so maybe we'll make that an orange if we're going to hover, and then a background tab color, I don't know, maybe a green. So as you can see, we've changed up all the colors to our heart's content. Again, you've got the borders. If you want to put a border in, currently it's hidden, so let's put a dashed border in this time. Let's leave the color and let's just let's just increase the size so you can see. So that's now what your categories would actually look like. And again, you can enable the shadow if that's what you want to do. And the last thing that we're going to do is we're just going to look at the pagination. So as we said, the pagination happens when you've got too many blog posts for one particular page, and then obviously this pagination comes up at the bottom over here so that you can get to page 2, 3, 4. And obviously as you add more blog posts, so the pagination will automatically get populated for you. So again, if we want to go change it, if we change our background color, let's make that green. So now you can see everything is green. That's the first thing. So let's select selected background color. Let's go with the yellow. So you can see that's for the actual page that's selected just at the moment. And then of course we can do a hover color. So let's make that orange again. So you'll be able to see, hopefully, as we hover over these, they change. And then obviously that one is the current page, so that's in yellow. Again, we can do the same thing with the border style. Currently it's hidden. Let's make it dotted. We'll leave the color again, we'll leave the rounding, and let's just increase the size so you can see what that kind of looks like. Alright, so I know this is looking a little bit crazy, but the idea obviously is just to show you how to sort everything out. And that's pretty much all you have to do in terms of literally anything and everything that's in your blog. Just go ahead and edit your theme, and that should be it. You can make your blog look any way that you need it to look. So just before we wrap up, there's a couple of other things that I just want to show you. The first one is, if we now go to configure, what we will then be able to do is to decide how much of this information we actually want to be on our site and how much not. So we can turn things on and off. So if you look at this particular blog post, we've got a date there. Now if I turn that date off, because maybe we want an evergreen blog, then it will turn the date off. Now I haven't confirmed yet, so you won't see the change. We'll do that in just a little while. If we don't want to show the author, we turn that off, but we probably do. The categories might be a bit irritating, so let's get rid of the categories for the moment. Do we want to show the button? Yes, we do, because when people click on our button, it's going to take them to the news page, and it's going to allow them to read the entire blog, where at the moment they're only just being able to read just a small snippet. We can select an icon for our button if we want. In this case, I don't want to, and of course you can align the button anywhere that you want. I'll just leave it where it is for now, and when I hit confirm, now you'll see everything has changed. Right, so the information that we got rid of, in fact, let's just go back into configure, and you'll be able to see. So that you can see there's no date because we took that off, and the categories are also now hidden. Obviously, if you want to put them back, no problem, just go put them back, and if we confirm, you'll see just like that your date comes back. So it's really easy to go ahead and make your blog look exactly like you want, and to hide the elements that you don't want. Probably the last thing that we should just look at is our image size. So again, this allows you to change this particular image over here, and it gives you 3 different configurations. So you'll do it for the desktop, you'll do it for the tablet, and you'll do it for the mobile. So obviously we can increase the width. So as I pull that width, you'll see what happens. Give it a second. So you can see it's stretched it a little bit, and of course I can increase the height just a touch as well if I want to. In fact, let's make that a whole lot bigger, and you can see exactly what it's done. So it's still kind of square shape, but a little bit rectangular, but much bigger. And of course then I can go ahead and confirm that, and just like that our blog is actually configured.